What's going on, everyone? We're getting everything squared away, set up here. So if you're seeing us live right now, this is what's happening. I'll go ahead and start this thing off. I'm Travis Brown with the Eagle. I am not at the Eagle. The man who is at the Eagle, the man who is the Eagle, that is the great Robert Cessna down there somewhere that says Robert Cessna in that very nice, comfy looking leather chair. I like this. It's kind of like the recliner.
I could fall asleep here, but I know David's going to have a lot of riveting things to say, so I'll be at the edge of my seat.
There you go. That's the important guy in the conversation. That's David Ubben of the Athletic, Tennessee beat reporter, longtime just journalism giant in the college football world. Known David for a while. David, thanks for joining us, and we get to talk. At first it was like, let's talk some new schedule. Then it's like, maybe we'll talk if there's going to be a football season. Now I think things have kind of settled for the time being. What's the last 7 days been like for you?
I mean, I think, anybody who's really paid attention can kind of see this coming. I think that there's hurdles, right? You're talking about, okay, you're turning the corner and camps are probably going to start. Okay, do you think you can do a training camp and not have outbreaks? Obviously, two conferences basically decided, but we don't think so. Well, the SEC, the ACC, and the Big 12, right now, the next big hurdle is, okay, students are slowly coming back to campuses. If you don't have outbreaks on campuses, it seems like it's going to be full speed ahead. If this thing goes sideways, it's going to be if you have pretty widespread outbreaks on campuses, and that's what's going to put, the college season at risk. So I hope everyone realizes that the season is probably based around college students acting responsibly. So best of luck.
Yeah, I was going to say exactly. What do you feel the odds? What's the gut down there in your land?
I mean, Tennessee's not willing to talk a whole lot about much contingency, but you read the room and you talk to people. Feels like it's in the single digits probably. I think everyone wants to play, but if you have outbreaks, you just can't really feel good about that. I think obviously you're going to have a disagreement from your athletic director, possibly your coach, obviously your players. But the president's the guys that have to worry about future liability, that have to worry about, okay, it happens if. And they're a risk-averse bunch, and obviously the heart issues that have come up have become a serious thing when elite athletes are getting this and developing myocarditis, which can do a number of things to young people. That's a concern. This whole idea that it's just a flu, of course, has I hope for most people been long gone. And but just when you look at how college students act and operate and live, and how the virus spreads, I don't know how you think that you're not going to have widespread outbreaks on college campuses. And, you hope for the best. I want to see a college football season. You guys obviously do as well. But I'm not real optimistic that things are going to end up much different in the SEC, the ACC, and the Big 12 compared to the Big 10 and the Pac-12, no matter how much they do want to play.
What has the return to play been like for Tennessee as far as how they've been tested, how much – I know you can't bubble, as we've all said in college athletics, but a lot of this talk about functional groups, functional activity groups, how much of that has been going on in Tennessee? What does that kind of look like, and what is the testing and numbers that you know of been like around the Vols?
Well, that was what happened for the first month, and it went pretty well. They tested everybody when they got to campus after the 3-month shutdown. And then there was no, only guys that were showing symptoms were tested beyond that. And so Tennessee kept a pretty clean bill of health for the first month. And then guys went home for the 4th of July, came back, were retested again. And, we've heard some different numbers. I feel confident that it was in the single digits. We heard some things about other guys being quarantined, but there were definitely some positive tests. And that's where they were at. We haven't heard much since then. It's hard to really know exactly what the situation is. I haven't heard a lot of further outbreaks, but some positive tests. Tennessee hasn't been super forthcoming on what those look like and how they explicitly handled it, but it's pretty standard protocol, quarantine and hope for the best and sort of wait it out and then ease guys back in. But yeah, they did small groups at the start, but now as you're getting into more teamwork, it's not really pop course. with camp, we're 5 days away from camp. Obviously, it's not possible to social distance when you have camp and all those things. And, when you're meeting and when you're around each other, you can distance as much as possible. But, of course, the sport of football is not one of social distancing.
How would spring football look in Tennessee? Because that's got to be an option, obviously, if everything gets canceled. And we have to assume we're going to have to possibly think how would that look in College Station. How would that look in Knoxville?
Well, I don't think it'd look too much different than it would anywhere else. I mean, just a lot of people stretched really thin. You talk about, travel, facility usage, sports information departments, all these things. Playing every sport, in one semester, it seems tough. And if you play football, it would seem to be like, well, can you play soccer? Can you play, all the other track, all the other fall sports? Obviously, football is the one that's going to make money. It's going to be at the top of the list. Logistically, it'd be difficult, but, money has a way of making logistics not so difficult. And so I think there's so many hurdles to go. I think when people talk about spring football, I'm skeptical that things are going to look much different. Again, you're still going to be on a college campus. You still can't really bubble guys. Ideally, maybe your caseload in the city, whether that's people in the hospital, active cases, ideally if people act responsibly, stay out of large groups, wear masks, don't do things that the CDC says you shouldn't do. Maybe you could have your cases go down, but you're still, I'm just really skeptical that things are going to be much different in the spring than they would be in the fall. You give yourself more time, you'd have more information, but again, the idea that there's going to be, a vaccine or a reliable treatment, man, that's a big gamble. And I was surprised that we've seen it pushed so definitively. I kind of thought we would see, well, we're going to push the season back to October or maybe November, and then maybe split over the holidays, over the semester break. But the punting to spring, I just think the logistics and the realities of trying to play in the spring, I don't know that I believe things are going to be much different. It feels like a now or never thing for the 2020 season.
Yeah. It's been really great and interesting following your Twitter, because I know you're a guy who spent a lot of time covering the 12 and covering the realignment, everything that happened inside your headspace. That in all weird turns of fate, a lot of the fall college football fate would be leaning on the vote of the Big 12 and what the Big 12 wanted to do.
Yeah, I mean, I think the SEC and the ACC are pretty firmly they want to play. It doesn't look great when you have a minority of power conferences that are playing, when you have 2 of 5, because that, even if you just have 3, it seems like there's conflicting medical advice. And if you're going to play, you're going to have to say, okay, why is the medical advice that you got in the ACC, the SEC, and the Big 12 different than what they got in the Pac-12 and the Big 10? The whole thing is just messy. And I think it comes down to, can you limit outbreaks? Do you not have any serious cases where kids are going in the hospital, God forbid, dying? Can you limit those things? If you can get through and not have that, then yeah, I think some of those questions about what the information was can sort of fade away. But the first time you have a kid that's on a ventilator or, is in the hospital or has a serious heart thing that ends a career, or like I said, dies, you're going to have to answer some difficult questions. And obviously there's liability tied to that as well. And it's different when you're talking to a player who feels like they're invincible, or a coach who knows how badly his players want to play, or an athletic director who has so much money on the line. A president is just going to be more risk averse. And those are the people that are making a lot of these decisions. And of course they're going to have a lot of pressure. But I think that those things are not going to be all that different on campuses across the other 3 conferences. It's silly to think that if you try to play the season that you're not taking a pretty big risk. And maybe some people are willing to take that risk, but you have 6 weeks, 5 weeks until the season starts in the SEC. And, you gotta, if you're going to play football, you got to hope that things stay pretty calm and don't have outbreaks when students come back. That's really everything, I think, is that if students come back and there's a huge outbreak and, 10 campuses in those 3 conferences say, we can't have students on campus, and they send everybody home, how do you play football? Like how? You just, I don't think you can. And so that I think is really what this all comes down to.
Got to say, what happens if everything's going well? What do you think, David, if just one university had problems with COVID? Because we've seen our numbers are going down around here in our community. A&M doesn't give us our figures. We have to feel that's the same way. And then suddenly, let's say, like I said, 13 of 14 are good. And let's say Missouri's is off the chart. How do you handle that? I mean, I'd be interested. How would you handle that?
And how do you handle that personally with Missouri?
I mean,
I knew he was in the Big 12, yeah.
Yeah, that's the $1 million question, I think. I think two things. One, I guess you would probably find a way. I think it does matter who is being affected and what that looks like. Is it just students? Do you have 10 players, 30 players that have it? You have one player that's in the hospital, and that becomes an issue. I think there's two things we're talking about here. We're talking about the sort of macro cases, and then we're talking about possible, acute cases where you have a guy who's really in trouble and their life could be in danger. And, I think when people say, the kids are going to be fine, most of the time I think they're right. But you're talking about 5,000-6,000 players right now, and the 6 conferences that are still kicking. And yeah, most players are probably going to be okay, but there's probably going to be some that may not be if they contract the virus. And ultimately, the plans that these conferences have, they can't make the same promises that the NBA or the NHL can and say, you're really unlikely to get this virus. You can't really say that. There's a good chance that a lot of these guys are going to be infected. And that is, what you have to hope against, because that's what the season, I think, hinges on is limiting all those things. The acute cases, the total cases. I mean, if you have 10 kids that test positive across the entire conference, but 2 of those end up in the hospital, it doesn't really matter. So if there's one school that's having issues, I think that the conferences could probably work around that. Maybe you shut things down at that one school for 2 weeks. You massage the schedule a little bit. Maybe you cancel some games. But, what do issues look like? That's a loaded word that could mean a lot of things,
Yeah.
David, I think we'd be remiss is let's actually talk a little football.
That's what I was going to say.
There was like 10 minutes last week when I was excited about the possibility of going to Tennessee.
Yeah.
Because I've never been there. People have told me what a great setting it is. When you look at how good that game could be, because Tennessee finished strong. You got Pruitt, you got Jimbo. What were your thoughts on just the fact that A&M could be coming to Tennessee?
I mean, it'll be fun. I don't sense that, you're going to have that atmosphere that really makes those road trips in the SEC really fun. I don't anticipate that A&M's band will be accompanying them on that trip, which is a big part of that. I mean, I think it's going to be fun. I mean, ultimately, Tennessee fans were frustrated that they didn't get a Mississippi game. I think they were hoping that. You have 5 prospective opponents. Tennessee already had Arkansas on the schedule, so you had to kind of wonder what they might draw. But you have 5 prospective opponents, 3 in the top 15, and then the 2 Mississippi schools that have first-year coaches that didn't really get to do a whole lot. So obviously Tennessee is hoping, that you're probably going to get one of those top 15 teams. Might have to go on the road to those, but they're hoping they get another Mississippi. Instead, they get Auburn on the road, and then you host Texas A&M. I think Tennessee, they're getting better. The roster is borderline unrecognizable to the one that Jeremy Pruitt inherited, but the depth still isn't quite there. They're really thin at a handful of positions. They corner, and of course, inside linebacker are 2 really, really key spots for them. But I mean, it'd be a fun game. I think Tennessee would have a shot to beat those teams. I mean, other than Alabama and Georgia, so I don't even think I would say Tennessee can't beat this year. They played a lot of games in the last 2 years that you really feel like Tennessee just could not win. Georgia last year, maybe to a lesser extent, Alabama. Tua got hurt, and they kind of messed around with Bama last year in Tuscaloosa. But this year, I mean, Georgia, with all the questions they have and all the resets, Tennessee, they can win that game in theory. I don't think the world would stop. And then, Alabama, we'll see what their offense looks like with Mac Jones. But Tennessee's gotten to that point where they feel like they can be competitive with a lot of schools. Can they beat a lot of schools? We'll find out, I suppose.
How much has Pruitt ingrained himself, not only kind of within the culture of that whole athletic department, but within the fan base? I know when that first kind of came out, that was not necessarily everybody's first pick, but has he kind of proven his worth to the fan base since he's come on?
I think, if you'd asked me that last September, I think I probably would have had a different answer. I think Tennessee fans would have had a different answer. But I think, he coaches aggressively. He won over Phil Fulmer, who wanted a football coach and got one. I think there's definitely a sense from a lot of people around Tennessee that they're uncomfortable with the amount of Bama that's in the Tennessee facilities. Like, that's a real dynamic between Pruitt, a lot of his assistants, a lot of the support staff. There's a lot of Alabama in the room. And I think, when Phil Fulmer was there, it was a lot of Tennessee guys, a lot of VFLs, a lot of guys that just bled orange. They don't really have that right now. And I think if they start reaching their heights, I could see some Tennessee fans maybe being a little bit, I don't know. It wouldn't maybe be as sort of chest thumpy as it was when Phil Fulmer had it going. You had this like Tennessee guy that had resurrected Tennessee, but they're so hungry to get back that I think wins will be wins. And I think, they've progressed the recruiting. When you close as strong as Tennessee did last year, you get a top 10 class, you carry that over. They've really done a nice job after the shutdown. They're in the top 5 right now in the 2021 class. I mean, it's been all good news for him, since about October. They've had, obviously the winning streak and then finish strong on the recruiting trail, keep that going. So it's been pretty good vibes, and Tennessee fans are excited again, more so than they were come back from Florida. And Tennessee is sitting there at 1-3 at that point and licking their wounds from a Florida loss. So interesting times in Tennessee, but Jeremy Pruitt won a lot of people over with that winning streak. And then you compound that with recruiting, and people are believing here.
I wonder, we've all been around programs at low points. When they lost that Georgia State game, how low were things at Tennessee?
It wasn't so much just Georgia State. I think people were so shocked because there was so much good vibes leading into that season, even the way that the 2018 season ended with 2 lopsided losses to Vandy and Missouri. People were still like, we believe in this guy. We didn't have the horses last year. You kind of heard that from people. So it was more shock. I think where the frustration set in was coughing up that lead to BYU the next week. And then it really capped it off when you get your butt beat by Florida. I don't think anybody thought they were going to beat Florida, but to be embarrassed like that, I think at that point, that was when you start hearing the, Phil Fulmer's planning a coup rumors, and he's going to take over, when they lose to Alabama. That's when, that's when you heard all that stuff where Phil Fulmer has to come. I mean, how many ADs in the last decade have had to come out in the middle of a season and say, I'm not going to replace my head coach? Like, the rumors, they weren't completely baseless, but they were also kind of silly. And it's interesting because that was a weird time in Tennessee football, and to have it flip so quickly, he's got guys believing, and they really play hard for him, and they love him. I mean, I talked to a lot of people around the program, ex-players, people inside the program, and you just don't hear a lot of people saying anything more than he's pretty hard on these guys. He demands a lot out of them, and that's been a change for a lot of these guys in the program.
What's Jeremy Pruitt, the man? I always wonder what, it's when the cameras aren't rolling, what's your thoughts on Jeremy Pruitt? Jimbo's kind of like a guy, old school. We like being around him. He's one of those different coaches. Jackie was, Jackie Sherrill. We've seen them all here in College Station. What kind of guy is Pruitt?
I think there's 3 Jeremy Pruitts. There's the one that people see where you have like the media where it's like kind of boring. You don't see a lot of the personality come out. Obviously very closely guarded with information. Doesn't really want to offer a lot of insight. Every now and then, especially after games, if you get him talking about ball and strategy, he's really interesting because he, you talk to people a year, this guy's like a defensive genius. And I think that's pretty accurate when you get him really talking about the defense, and you talk to people that really know what they're talking about in the business. He knows the defenses, and having an X's and O's expert like that, I think is welcome, because Tennessee didn't have that in Butch Jones. And so you have that side, the sort of, I wouldn't say buttoned up as much as just like very closed off, walled off. And then you have the fire breather, Jeremy Pruitt, on the practice field with his players. When the effort's not there, he's going to get after guys, and most of it is, not going to be able to be broadcast on television. You got the Jerry Pruitt that's kicking and putting the dent in the whiteboard and grabbing, Jarek Arantano by the face mask. He's a pretty intense guy. And then you have the sort of backslapping Southern boy. You see some of that with fundraisers. You see some of that obviously in recruiting. You can't really argue with his recruiting. And he fights for his players. And I think that really helps him in recruiting. I think he feels like he has his players' best interests and he wants to listen to them. It's interesting that 911, I guess it wasn't a 911 call, but the police video of Jeremy Banks who had been arrested, that really paid off for them on the recruiting trail, because Jeremy Pruitt is trying to make the case to the cops, basically saying like, man, this guy doesn't have anybody to tell him like he needs to pay his parking tickets and he needs to shut his mouth and he doesn't have anybody at home. Like, can you help me, basically? And, I think you can talk about, the impropriety of a very powerful head coach leaning on the police in some ways in a not a small town, but university police. But a lot of people on the recruiting trail saw that as, he's trying to help his players. That helped Tennessee in recruiting. And so I think when you talk about what kind of a guy Jeremy Pruitt is, he's a complex guy, and you see very different facets of him depending on who you are. The media, people that are fans of the game, they see one Jeremy Pruitt. The fundraisers, the recruits, they see another Jeremy Pruitt. And then, of course, his players, they definitely see a little bit of all that. I think they see the Papa Bear, and I think they see the fire-breathing dragon at times. And, that's, like most people, complicated guy.
You talk the X's and O's defensive guy in Pruitt. You look at Jimbo Fisher, the quarterback whisperer. Should this game go off like we are expecting it to, what excites you about that matchup and the matchup between the two teams?
Yeah, I mean, I think just that offense in Kellen Mond against Tennessee. I mean, Tennessee gave up fewer plays longer than 30 yards last year than anybody in the country. They were playing that last month of the season. Some of it is who you're playing. Tennessee didn't play any great teams, but their defensive numbers stacked up right alongside Clemson and Ohio State. They really came into their own late in the season. And so can you keep limiting those big plays, and can you, stay healthy enough to be able to be what you want to be? I'd be interested to see that matchup between Jimbo's offense and Kellen Mond and Tennessee's defense.
Well, I'd also be interested to look back and see how many passing plays A&M had over 30 yards last year.
Tennessee, they just did. Yeah, Tennessee did a great job of keeping guys in front of them last year, and that's a credit to them, because they didn't have a ton of like big time playmakers, and this offensive line has got a lot of potential, but they've got to prove themselves, and that's going to be a really intriguing game.
Guess before we let you go, what about a rejuvenated Rick Barnes? How has he got in there and proven that, hey, I'm not done yet. I still got a lot left in me.
Recruiting, bringing dudes in. Last year was obviously tough because they lost 3 NBA players, well, 4, I guess 3.5, 3 NBA players and a G Leaguer off of their team, and a team that was number 1 in the country. I think they got to the Sweet 16 and lost that game to Purdue. But this year, this is going to be their most talented team, and I think just him being able to recruit has been huge. Keon Johnson, a big piece for them. They keep Josiah Jordan-James. The 5 stars, this is new for Tennessee. They're certainly one of the 15 best teams in the country. I mean, Tennessee's obviously never been to the Final Four, but you got to hope that, if you're a Tennessee fan, that they play this year, because this year's team would have as good of a shot as almost anybody.
Yeah. We'll end it with this, and the same thing I've ended with just about all the journalists that we've had here. But I'm going to give you a little bit of a twist, a little bit of a two-parter. One, you've had a great long career, talking to a lot of different guys, going to a lot of different events. This has been the summer of nostalgia since we haven't had anything else to do. Looking back, do you have a favorite journalist story, for either a favorite guy that you've covered, or a favorite event, or just a funny story that always pops back? And then I'll say the second part of that, you did a lot of covering around these parts. Do you have a favorite A&M coverage story too?
So I swear to you, I am not pandering when I say this. But one of the first Big 12 media days I was at, A&M was there, of course, and they brought Von Miller and Gerard Johnson. And Vaughn was obviously a very gregarious dude. He's continued that in the NFL. But I looked at his headshot, and he was like one of the only guys that had glasses on in his headshot. And I was like, that's kind of weird. So we were doing videos and stuff at ESPN at the time, and so I got Vaughn, and he came on camera with us, and I said, Vaughn, I was looking at your headshot, your brand new one. You got your glasses on. I haven't seen a lot of guys that rock the glasses in the headshot. What's that about? And he said, I can't see. and it's just that simple. And, I think that was Vaughn in a nutshell. He really was a great character and an even better player. And I don't think anybody around A&M has been surprised to see how much success he's had in the NFL, and how marketable he's been. I'm sure Old Spice has sold a lot more bottles in the College Station area.
Cease, you got anything else?
No.
Nothing really. I do remember that, and I remember that I was actually, we were kicking around ideas this summer. We were talking about, we ended up not doing it. Maybe the season gets canceled, we'll circle back to it. But we were talking about just like the craziest games we've ever covered. And man, that Nebraska A&M game in 2010, I think that's right, was like one of the most insane nights I've ever had. You had the Texags camera getting trashed by Carl Pelini. You had the late hit call that like people were losing their mind over. You had Taylor Martinez getting like taken in the locker room, and then Pelini's like jabbing him, and you have Tony Gerard-Eddy like grabbing like Ben Cotton's nether regions in Nebraska. And you have this like ironically A&M fighting for like the Big 12 to send the Huskers out on a sad note. And it's like there's no touchdowns scored in this game, and it's still one of the most fun games I've ever covered in my entire life. It was just a completely insane night. And I remember I filed a story at the gun on ESPN.com. It was like an instant analysis thing that we did. And I didn't mention the officiating. I don't know. I don't really like writing about officiating. It's not that interesting. There were a couple, iffy calls, but I just didn't write about the officiating. Well, I went down, talked to like Tannehill, and I forget who. I think Tannehill started in that game, and talked to like Christian Michael and some of those other guys. Came upstairs, and I had 336 emails from Nebraska fans in 1 hour. Let me tell you, they weren't all complimenting the quality of the story. I will just, I'll point that. So I guess that brings us full circle with Nebraska fans being displeased with their conference. And here we are today. I'm told Nebraska fans, not big fans of their current conference at the moment. So the more things change, the more they stay the same, I guess.
Maybe Nebraska can play Tennessee. They'll just draw it up and they'll play, and you'll feel like you'll be back home.
Let's do it. I'm game. Whatever football we can get this year, I'm all for.
Got it.
I'm here. Yeah. Well, hey man, I appreciate the time that you give us. Be sure to stay safe out there, and hopefully we'll see you up there in Knoxville here in a couple months.
Fingers crossed.
Yeah. Thanks, David. Thank you.
They can find your stuff and they can sell their hate mail.
Yes. So my new hate mail is at The Athletic. I think we're killing this stuff. I think we have a fantastic staff. Andy Staples, Bruce Feldman, Stu Mandel, Nicole Auerbach. We've got some fantastic people that are on top of all this stuff. So come to us, theathletic.com. My stuff's at David Ubben on Twitter. Check us out. Give us a try. We got 40% off, free trials, all that jazz. If you're not a subscriber to The Athletic, one flat rate gets you all 400 some of our writers from the UK to the West Coast. So you're missing out. Give us a shot.
There you go. Let's Ubben. We'll be seeing you down the line.
Sounds good. See you guys.